Before we get started, let's talk about all the supplies we'll need for this project. The first one is watercolor paper. I am working on a watercolor block. If you do not have a watercolor block, no problem at all. Just tape your paper down to your work surface. I say to do that because if you put a lot of water on your paper, it's gonna warp and then you're all of a sudden working on something that is not a flat surface. So make sure you tape it down if you're not working on a block. I have several different brushes here. You do not need all of these sizes. I would say probably a size 4 and then a details brush are the most important. You could also use a size 6 instead of a 4, but I have a 6, 4, 2, and the details brush. This is really, really important for when we do those fine details for if your dog has curly hair or like my little corgi has a bunch of fluff. You'll need a pencil for sketching and a gum eraser. You don't have to use a gum eraser, but I like to use a gum eraser because I just press it down and lightly pick up the pencil. That way you don't ruin the texture of your watercolor paper. Another thing that I'm gonna be using that you do not need to use this, because I show you another way to do it, but I am going to be using my iPad to sketch with. It's not mandatory, but if you have one, go ahead and bring it out. I have 2 cups of water. I like to use 2 cups, even though we're working with mostly neutral tones today because we're working with dogs and they typically don't have bright pink or bright purple fur unless you're my aunt likes to dye her dog's hair, but it's all natural. It doesn't hurt them or anything. But since we are working with neutral tones, I just like to keep 1 cup of clear water to rinse off my brush and the other one to pull water to paint with. I always like to have a paper towel underneath because I usually, if you ever get like too much water on your brush, you can lightly tap it off on the paper towel. And then of course, paints. Again, everybody's dog is gonna be a different color. Some of us might have similar colors. I think that a lot of us are gonna be using like yellow ochre or raw sienna or raw umber. There is dark umber. I don't like to use straight black, only around the eyes. And for black, I like to use either indigo or ultramarine blue and raw sienna, so it's kind of like a red color. And I mix those together and it makes something that looks like a dark gray. There's a lot more variation. When you use just black, it doesn't give you color depth. It just looks really flat. So if your dog is black, I recommend using a dark blue like indigo or ultramarine blue and mixing it with a reddish brown. You can even add in a little bit of yellow. Just mix it up until it becomes a color that looks similar to black but isn't 100% black. And we'll get there. I'll explain that later when we're painting, but those are the supplies that we're gonna need.